presentation. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions. The idea behind today is just to help you a little bit with building your resume, and as you kind of like prepare for looking for a job or an internship, these tips might be helpful for some of you. So I know, I don't know if all of you have access to your computer, but the idea that I had was that before I jump into some of the very brief slides that I have, was to give you the opportunity to open your resume or your CV. And maybe as we move through, you can make any edits, or you want to look at something in particular and make any change. um, why is your resume or your CV really important? And I will just talk a little bit about this as you maybe open those documents that you might have already built, something that you have used in the past as resume or CVs. Well, the resume is, or this the CV is you. It's the way that people will see you. So it will be really cool if we will have the opportunity of going to every job or internship we want to apply and use, or like, capacities to communicate, to go and say, hey, I'm the right candidate for your position, or you should hire me because I'm really good at this and I have done all of these things in the past. But we cannot do that. So that's where your resume and CV comes very handy. Your resume or your CV is you. It's what people will see about you, and how will people will kind of like identify you and recognize if they should give you that opportunity to join in a particular capacity their team. But the language that we use and how we present things in our resume is as important as the things that we have done. There is people who have done excellent things, but they are not really good at communicating those things. And there is people who might not be doing really great things, but they are excellent at selling those things. And so being a great communicator through our CVs will be a very key strategy to secure a position. It's not the same that someone reads, oh, you're a booger, that you're a blogger. So make sure that what you want to communicate is intentional and is clearly there. So I guess the first clarification that I would like to make is a CV and a resume are very similar but are different. And I'm not going to focus on a CV today because it's a different, but many of the elements that we're going to look really briefly here are going to be relevant for those, for the CV too. I'm going to focus on what a resume is. So the main difference between these two documents is the extent. A resume will be one and no more than 2 pages. As the name say it's a very summarized and condensed version of your profile. Um, it should include different areas, and we will cover a little bit of those. The curriculum can be as long as you wish. You can add more things, you can explain more, you can expand your descriptions, but there is no page limit. If you ask me, in my experience, for example, when we apply for like an award, or we want to, um, being considered for a particular thing within the institution, we usually submit a CV. They want to see everything we have done in very detail. There is even something called an annotated CV, where your CV can be uh, can get appendices, and you can add like notes and different comments and feedback from people. And so when we apply for grants and there is these like 200 people applying for the same thing, they will always ask you for a resume. But even though the resume is very small and very short, and you don't have a lot of space, you should see the resume as your X-ray when you go to the doctor. If you take an X-ray, but the X-ray is missing your heart, the doctor won't be able to make a very smart decision about the treatment that you might need. The same happened with your resume. If you forget one of those key elements, the person who's making the decision about that particular opportunity might not have a full landscape and might not be able to make the best decision. So for me, these are the 5 Ps of resumes. They have to be painless. They have to be, excuse me, easy to read, well organized, Use the strategic settings of visualization, like bolding or highlighting when possible, to uh, stand out. Excuse me. Those are elements that you would like for people to notice. I know that there is this beautiful tendency online of these very colorful and very um, like modern versions of resumes, and those are probably well accepted in particular areas of work, like design or architecture or communications and marketing, because people might be looking at that creativeness. But the majority of the disciplines will be looking at something very simple, as plainless as you can make it. That's more professional. Don't get inspired by Legally Blonde and don't put perfume on your resume when you can, because that's not something that people will really look at it or make it as a valuable thing. Maybe they will remember you, but not by for the best reasons. It should be perfect, because if your resume has mistakes, from then you're signing the wrong foot. So make sure that you are reviewing grammar, spelling, punctuation, and that it is cohesive and it follows a particular format and it's easy for people to read. And if you have a mistake, that's why some resources that I will share later will be kind of like helpful. As I said, it should be 1 or 2 pages. In the best, it's to one 0.75 or zero point 0.5 inches in the margins. That will be like the normal. As you start reducing the margins, it kind of like looks really crowded. And so make sure that it has the best setting to make it look professional and appealing. Make sure that it's not really small. The font is not clear, really small, and then you're like just trying to pack everything within 2 pages. The fact that it's 2 pages doesn't mean that you should put the content of 10 pages in 2 pages. It is to be an effective on using the space that you have. I know for the group that I have, most of us are probably familiar with paper resumes. And right now, the tendency is mostly, at least in the United States, um, digital resumes in like a digital version. But in many places, there's still the tradition of using paper based. And there might be cases here that you still have to provide a paper based one. And so if you do that, again, don't put perfume, don't use pink paper, don't use colorful paper, be professional and use the etiquette that we follow in professionalism. So the right size of paper and the right color, which it will be just the white paper. And then make sure that the resume is customized to the right position that you want to apply. That's the most important part. The keywords of the description should be in the resume. If you're applying to be an associate researcher, but you're talking about being a farm manager, maybe there is a disconnection between the two, the job description and your resume there. So I will go, excuse me, really briefly through some of these sections. These are some of the sections that you should see in your resume. And I will tell you a little bit about some like kind of like advices on how to make those look a little bit more appealing. So in the heading or, you know, the intro part of your resume should be your information, not your nickname. I know that some of us might have a nickname. Um, if you have a nickname, and this is something that it's interesting for me, in some other cultures, like in Latin America, like say if my name is Rafael and I put Rafael quotations Rafa and then my last name, that is very unprofessional. In the United States culture, that's very well accepted. And so just make sure that you understand where are you putting this CV or resume forward for. Because that will be, Bob, I'm going to use you as an example. Bob's name is not Bob, but everybody professionally and personally knows him as Bob. So in our context, it will be correct to put your name, quotations, Bob, and your last name, because that's very well and professionally accepted. Um, what it won't be accepted is to sign like legal documents under a nickname or something like that. But make sure you have your name, your address. Some people use personal address, some people use professional address. You have to know what are you doing this for. For example, if I'm applying for another job at another university, I shall not use A&M address. I shall use my personal address as a respect for the institution where I currently work. Your email address, and you don't need to put email column your email address. People will recognize that when something has an at symbol, that's an email. Your title, right now, depending on what role you're playing, you should have your title there, your phone number, and you should have some sort of profiles within one of those professional platforms. So if this is a digital version of your resume, you can hyperlink the profile. But if it's not and it is printed, you should put the whole link so people can type that link and find you and look a little bit more about that. This is something that younger generations are doing more. They are more present in those. But if what I'm going to find in your LinkedIn is you going to Norgate, I probably should not attach the link. But if what I'm going to find is pictures about your attendance to conferences or pictures about or updates about professional development that you're completing, then I want to see it. But if it's you saying happy birthday to your grandmother, or if it's you, going on a trip, those are excellent things to do, but there are other platforms to do those things. Then, wow, that slide looks a little bit out of place, but then is the objective. What happens with the objective? When you submit a resume, you're doing that resume for a reason, and that objective should be there, whether it is presenting you professionally or intentionally applying for a particular job. So the first statement that you see is a student looking for an internship. You have to be writing in active voice and in a matter that you're demonstrating the people who are reading your resume that you really are passionate and want this particular opportunity. Seeking a summer internship to contribute to expertise in sustainable farming practices and data-driven decision-making to a forward-thinking agricultural organization focused on innovation and food security. That's the objective. You don't have to put objective there in your resume, but you can have a statement like this one. If you do not have a particular position that you're applying for, you can have a general one that talks a little bit more about your expertise and not that much about what you would like to do. So if you want to make sure that you stand up among other applicants, your description of this should be to the point of what that position that you're applying is about. So make sure that you're using relevant keywords and people can recognize and they say, oh, this is the girl from A&M who does research on red cherry for cancer, and that they understand the techniques that you're using. So this will be particularly interesting when you read someone's CV, because it's the only kind of like plain or open statement that you have to share a little bit more about yourself. So you have another one there, and this is a more general one when you don't have really, or you want to talk a little bit more about yourself and what you have done. And it is a passionate agricultural extension professional with a background in farmer outreach, training, and technology dissemination, aiming to support rural communities by promoting climate resilient practices and improving farm productivity through education, collaboration, and evidence-based solution. This will be for someone who's open to find a job but still don't have a particular position in mind. You just want to share a little bit more about you. Then you have your education. I think it's something about how the displaying of my slides, because they don't look like that on my um remember that when you're trying to present your education and your resume, it has to be chronologically from the latest to the earlier one. So you did last your PhD. Some of you might be a doctor of veterinary medicine, a master's of science, a master of ag, a master of education, and your undergrad. For each of those, you should detail where did you get the degree and the time where you were there and you took to complete this degree. Why is this important? Because if you're taking 7 years or 8 years to complete a PhD, there might be something there that they would like to look at it and consider. Is it a bad thing? No, because for example, Bob, again, I'm going to use you as an example. Bob's PhD might look a little bit longer than a traditional doctoral student, but he holds a full-time job at the same time. So people will be able to look at that and it will be something that they might find interesting and say, oh, he is able to carry a full-time job and to continue with their PhD. I'm going to look at a question that came on the chat, and it says, on the education section, it's okay to add your dissertation title. I have also seen resumes that mention the advisor name and their email. What do you think about that? I don't think that's a good thing for the resume because there is not enough space, but it's an excellent thing to add in your CV, in the longest version of your CV. But if you are applying for a research position and you have space in your resume, I think those details will be good, especially the title. I will prioritize the title over your advisor. You have to be strategic too. I mean, if you have an advisor that is just this person that is like the person of a particular topic, I mean, I will put my advisor's name just because that might be something that other researchers will find applicable, relevant, excuse me, and will be like, for example, my friends from Texas Tech, where graduate students with Mindy brochures will be the Undersecretary for Food Safety. That's a name that I probably would like to have in my resume, but that's mostly for researchers positions. For other type of positions, people sometimes doesn't even know what a dissertation will be. So if you have space, dissertation title, I would recommend it in the resume, especially for research positions. If you don't have space, those details will be very good to have in your CV. I have those things in my CV, but I don't have them in my resume. Um, sorry, I moved the slide. Okay. And now I can't find the Teams. Sorry, I have to get out to find Teams because I lost the meeting. There you go. I found it. I'm gonna reshare the presentation. Sorry.
Some technical difficulties. It's okay.
I'm still learning how to use my new computer. Okay. So if you have any other question, please put it in the chat and then I will be happy to answer those questions. So as I was saying, some of you might have completed other things during your undergraduate or graduate school minor study abroad programs, graduate certificate. All of those things should be at the bottom of your education, but it should go along the degree where you completed it. So for example, if I have a graduate certificate during my master's, that is below all the information on my master's degree. So make sure these are all complete. You might have, or you might think, okay, I have a PhD, so I probably won't add anything about my master's or anything about my undergrad. Those are as relevant as your PhD. Maybe your PhD is the leading degree right now, but people still want to know what drove you to get to that PhD program. Then you have your experience. And your experience is like your superpowers. It's like you became Superman or Wonder Woman through your experience. There's a lot of people with great degrees, but with not a lot of experience. So your experience is a summary of the accomplishments, skills, interests that you have. It showcases what makes you stand out, and it makes the reader kind of like want to see where you have gained those skills. This is one of those sections that should be altered depending on the position. And I will go back to the question that was in the chat about a dissertation title. If this is a heavy research position, I will talk a lot about my management of lab equipment, my time in the lab, the multiple experiments that I might have been involved with. But if I am applying for a more industry role, I will talk about my management of people, the budget part, the manage of resources, and how I distribute those resources. These should be, and particularly at this time, these should be written in a way that they talk about the actions that you did and not very general without any type of outcome coming out of your activities. So, for example, these are some ways on how you can write your experiences. You name them with a general name. For example, you were an agriculture extension officer. Some of you will say graduate research assistant. I and you should tell people what came out of those efforts. So I delivered over 40 farmer training workshops on sustainable practices. I implemented 5 different protocols for the lab. I improve or revise or revamp the lab guidelines for this particular protocol. I redesigned this lab practice that my lab had. All of those things, but they should tell the reader what you did and what you accomplished out of that. So make sure that in each of your positions of your experiences, you take the time to at least write 1 or 2, maximum 3 of the most important experiences that you gain in that particular role. Okay. So here is another kind of like just examples of how you can or what information should be there when you write about your experience. You list them chronologically from the latest to the earliest one. You use action words, as I was saying: assisted, collected, collaborated, implemented, designed. The ones that are in the past, you write them in past tense. But the ones that you're doing in the current position should be in present tense because you're still going through those. Unless you're not working there anymore. But for doctoral students, you're still a doctoral student up to the day you graduate. So in that, those should be in present tense. The practices or the organizations or whatever you did these activities should be bolded because people want to see where are you coming from. I mean, it's not the same going to a rural University of El Salvador than going to Harvard or MIT. And so people really want to know, it's about that academic or professional pedigree that people want to see. You should cite the city and the state and include the dates that you were part of that role. And you have an example there as a research intern in Corteva Agri-Science in Johnston, Iowa, from January to August 2024. And you have there 3 action items that this person achieved through those. These are more like kind of like relaxed. Those are the very formal sections of your resume. Now we're entering the most relaxed one: leadership and involvement. You cannot list something that you were part as something that you did as a leader. It's not the same. So, for example, if you were the president of your student association, that's a leadership. If you were member of a committee, that's an involvement activity. You probably will accumulate tons of these throughout your academic career. So you have to prioritize the ones that are relevant for the position you're applying. Similarly, with honors awards, professional organizations, and scholarships. If you look at my CV, because of the nature of the academic world, I belong to like 14 organizations as a reviewer, as a member, as a student advisor, different roles. So depending what I am applying for, those are the ones that you will move to your CV, to your resume. Scholarships might be a good thing to add. Honors for your research, honors for your student involvement will be research awards will be good for a research position. Leadership awards will be good for an industry role, but research too. So look at what are you applying and make the decision on what's relevant. I will say an award that you got as the most creative classmate in 2006 when you were in sixth grade might not be relevant to add anymore. I know you love those awards. I love you working hard to be the most creative ones in your undergrad, in your high school class, but they're too irrelevant at this point. You have evolved professionally too much. For example, I still list things from my undergrad in my CV, but only those who are really academic in nature. If they are not, if they were more like civilian or leadership type, those might be removed at this point, and I focus more on like the things that come out of the current role. So this is a huge part of debate in resumes. Students love to write about interest in their resumes. It's not a bad thing, but you have to read the audience that you're doing this. I mean, if your hobby is to chase squirrels in the park, I don't know if that's really relevant to add. But if this is a position about research and development at a food industry and your passion is cooking, I think that that's connected and that might be relevant if you have space, but I will prioritize other areas. If I'm reviewing someone's resume, I think the interest part will bring me to understand that person as a balanced human, and you can share a little bit about this, but it should not be the priority of your resume. So if you have a section and you would like to keep it, that's fine. Don't feel bad about keeping that section, but be intentional and be professional. I mean, there is hobbies that are very like we play in the professional world by the social norms. That's, I guess, my best advice. What is commonly accepted by society will be also well received in a CV. What is not really more normally or commonly society accepted by society might not be as relevant to add in your resume. But if you're a great pianist, painter, if you're a gardener, if you are, part of a honeybee keeping club, those things might be more relevant than if you chase squirrels or have other type of non-related interest in your resume. Finally, your references. And people make a mistake in this. I get a lot of requests to write reference letters for students that I don't even know what they are applying for. They never told me. I don't know what they want me to say. So your references should be people who can talk about you in the capacities of that particular position. So 3 to 4 is the recommended number. Make sure that you ask the person first. It is not adequate to add a person as a reference. If, for example, you ask me to be your reference today and you say, hey, can I be your reference? Can you be my reference for this particular position? And I say yes, you can keep using that person. That person has but you should update that person saying, hey, now I'm applying for this other role and now I'm applying for this other role. So that person will be prepared and will know what to say. So if you do not say it, I have known people who never will complete a reference unless they know, unless the student has contacted them before and is really well aware of what they are applying and what they can say. If you need more resources about this particular process, I know this is really brief and Abril gave me 30 minutes and I'm 2 minutes over the 30 minutes, so I apologize for that. But the career and professional centers in your particular universities, I know this probably will be seen by other students in the REEU program. So you should find those career centers. But AI is there and you can, this is one of those great uses where you can integrate AI into the things you do. If you go to LinkedIn right now, you can look at positions and it will tell you if you're competitive based on the information you have in your profile or not. That's a great sense if you don't want to invest putting your resume in places where you might not be competitive. For that to be accurate, your LinkedIn profile should be updated and should include all the elements of your professional profile. But if you're working on preparing one, like if you're about to start looking for jobs, Canva is a great resource. They have really good, well, if you don't have access to any of these ones, Microsoft Word has excellent templates already designed, but Canva will be good one. Resi is another one that is pretty good, and SETI will be the other one that I think has really plain and professional templates that you can easily customize. But beyond that, you can use AI to help you see how you can improve the language and sell yourself better through your resume. Remember, the resume is the only thing people is going to see. If your resume doesn't stand out, you won't either in that particular pursuit of a job or an internship. That's everything that I have. All of you have my email. So if you need anything from me or you have any questions, or even if you want me to look at your resumes anytime, I'm happy to do so. I'm going to stop sharing right now and I will take any questions if you have any questions for me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Landaverde. That was really insightful. And as you know, I'll be posting this on our YouTube channel so that other students can refer back to it. Even if you guys want to go back and look at, oh, what did he say at this time? You can go back and look at it on our YouTube channel. And I do have a question.
Mhm.
So I've seen on some resumes, or I guess CVs because they're longer, that people list their creative works. So like,
Mhm.
okay, you've done like a podcast, if you've done like this, you list it there. So what do you think about, is that in the interest section, or would you
No,
recommend listing
that
it?
those are artifacts that you have created. Those can come on very different. For example, you know, people is very familiar with journal articles and conference presentations and poster abstracts, but there are disciplines like dance where people will cite and put as outcomes of their scholarship a performance, and they cite that performance, and people some people record those performances and has a library of their performance and then go and they watch the performance and cite those performances as like, oh, I don't know, XY dancer used this dance as an expression of rebellion against this particular topic, or this particular performance was really relevant towards climate advocacy or something like that. Similarly with others, if you have a podcast, if you have excuse me, photographies or any kind of like artistic artifact, they should be also included in your CV. Very similar. For example, I have a section on my CV because it is kind of like relevant right now for like the academic kind of like track, a section that is called in the media. Every time someone writes something about me or they do an interview and they post like a blog about that interview, and or they call me and ask me for my opinion about a particular topic and they write about it or they do a video about it, I I put that link in that section because that is a contribution you have made. So it's not a bad thing to have. It won't go on your interest. So for example, I don't have an interest section because my interest in terms of what I like to do in my free time are not really related to my professional career. I mean, if I put that I love to take naps, probably they won't really be very interested on hiring me. So, but it's nothing wrong to have. This is my personal intake. Don't take it as the rule. I feel it's for the very young generations that they like to have that interest section. As the CV starts to grow, it kind of like you eliminate that section, I guess.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I don't have that section definitely, but I have been thinking of including like creative works or things like that.
Yeah. So, for example, I have seen that you have managed this particular process. Well, this particular process of organizing this set, these will be part of your activities. I hosted X number of professional development sessions with speakers, blah, blah, blah. But the podcast you record, if you interview people, if you produce them, if you edit them, that should be part of your creative work.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Landaverde. Is there any more questions from the rest of the participants?
Thank you, Dr. Landaverde. That was an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for those who joining me. And if you have any questions anytime, you know where to find me.
Thank you so much. See you on
I'll
the
see
next
you.
one.
Bye.